Hello, I'm Paul Perrello, and welcome to the Philly Factor. I don't know about you, but have you ever wanted to run away and join the circus? Yeah, come on, admit it, you do. You did. I do. Maybe one day I will, I don't know. Although I only see myself as the clown in the circus. But you can now run away and join the circus, and it's not as far away as you think. Located at 6452 Green Street in the Germantown section of Philadelphia, the Philadelphia School of Circus Arts has something for everyone, from private lessons to classes for youth and adults, from flying trapeze classes to dance. The great thing is that there really is something for everyone, from beginners to seasoned veterans. All are welcome. This year, the Philadelphia School of Circus Arts is even offering up its first haunted circus. Can you imagine that? I guess there's got to be a lot of clowns involved. That's all. We'll get to that and so much more. Joining me on this edition of the Philly Factor to talk about the great work that they do with the Philadelphia School of Circus is Shana Kennedy, Executive Director of the Philadelphia School of Circus Arts. And Shana, thanks for being with us.
So glad to be here.
I was amazed when I discovered your school, and I just happened to stumble upon it a while back. And I have to say that we've been really working hard to get this show to come together, and here it is. And then they threw a curveball at me because I thought we were just going to talk about the school, and now they have this Haunted Mansion tour, for Halloween. So you've got a lot going on there at the school.
We do. We opened in our new location about a year ago, and 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, we have activities happening. Whether it's classes for the professionals or little kids classes or performances, it is a very busy place.
So I opened up the show by asking that proverbial question, did you ever want to run away and join the circus? And sort of like for the past 15 years or so, you have sort of lived the circus, right?
Well, even longer than that for myself, really. I opened the school over 15 years ago, but I've been doing circus almost my whole life. I started doing circus when I was a teenager and went away to a circus school myself when I was about 19. And so I started by training myself as a trapeze artist and a juggler and an acrobat and performing. It was only a few years into that I started getting to teaching.
Yeah. So when you say circus, we all conjure up those big arena-type shows or the tent-type circus. So can we sort of define what circus is?
I'd love to. And in fact, if there was one thing I would love to get across today, it's the idea that the traditional American imagery of circus, which tends to be three rings and animals and sequins and cannons, is a passé model that is no longer really representative of circus in this country, and that we have instead what's called contemporary circus. And that is circus based on these beautiful art forms of acrobatics, contortion, juggling, wire walking, unicycling, all the skills you associate with circus, but brought into a more modern theatrical context.
Interesting.
So we have smaller shows that are more avant-garde, shows that are narrative. All different kinds of circus companies exist now.
Wow, that's a really interesting perspective. We often think you mentioned the high wire and the acrobats, and clowns also play a part of circus too. But chances are, if somebody's coming to your circus school, are they going to learn the artistry behind pantomime or being a clown?
Maybe. It's not the first thing we teach. Clowning, I should say, for children, we do often teach clowning in like our summer camps as part of their little performance regimen when they do their shows. But as an adult, clowning is actually a really subtle art form of its own, and it's much more about being a physical comedian. And it's not the specialty that we teach here, because there's another school in Philadelphia called the Pig Iron School of Physical Theater, where they do mask and mime and all of this physical theater work that's derived from European schools, which can be a lot less traditional clowning and more just about the expressive physical comedy.
So how did your school come to be? I mean, whose brainstorm, idea, spark? Someone said, why don't we try this and see if it sticks?
Well, I think like a lot of people, you start by doing the thing you love, and then you start to wonder, well, how can I make a living doing this thing? And it grows very small. For me, it started by, I was performing, and someone heard about me as a performing trapeze artist and said, oh, would you teach me something? And so I taught my first lesson, and it grew from my house. We actually had a trapeze hang up in my house for a while, and students would come there, and we had a backyard rig. It all started very small. My husband is a juggler, and he's also an engineer, and he builds things. So he builds big shapes to juggle in, and he also built us aerial rigs to perform with. So the two of us started over time trying to think, how can we make this more of a sustainable operation here? We opened our first location, our first outside location, I think in around 2006, and then in 2008 we moved to a warehouse space so we could start teaching more and more classes. At that point I was also having kids, and it made sense for me to have something that kind of kept me closer to home while he was still doing a lot of traveling. So I started building the business, and now it's almost 20 years later, and we now have over 500 students a week coming through the doors, taking classes. We have about 100 different classes a week happening.
I want to get into some of the classes and some of the offerings, and some people may turn around and say, well, that's great for Shana because she has all of this experience as a trapeze artist. And somebody might be thinking, well, that would be something I would like to try, but I don't have any experience doing that. So what you offer, is it just for people that are seasoned professionals who want to sort of fine-tune their artistry, or if someone just wants to walk in the door and think, maybe I could just look and see what it's all about and decide if this is right for me?
Well, we absolutely handle both, and we also handle all ages. So I started as a recreational adult teacher, so teaching adults who had no experience to climb a rope or hang from a trapeze. That was where I began, and it's still a big part of the school's identity. Our youth programs are kind of exploding right now. Lots of kids are trying this out. I think they have a lot less inhibitions in the beginning to do it, so they jump in really easily. But even for our adults, we have beginner classes in trampoline, in handstands, in tight wire walking, for beginner adults who've never done anything like that before. And people have all different reasons. Some people come because they want a new form of fitness. They're just trying to get fit. Some people have always had some kind of craving to try something like this, or just a creative outlet they're looking for. Maybe they're supplementing something else they're doing in their life. All different reasons. But yes, we have a very thriving, healthy recreational community.
So when you started, I'm sure that the base of people, kids and adults that were coming in, was probably small. Now, as you've grown, and I'm going to show a photo here in a little bit of your new school and area inside of a church in Germantown. But have you seen the number of people, perhaps with the bigger space and more accommodations and more offerings, have you seen the number of people now coming out to the school increase from where it was 15 years ago?
Well, it's certainly growing, but it's growing in kind of an interesting way. So in the beginning, when I was so small, there weren't very many people teaching circus in the country at all. And so I had students traveling to me from all kinds of distances. They would come up from Delaware, or from Brooklyn, New York, or from Harrisburg. They would drive hours to come to the classes. But in that last, the late, maybe 2008, 2015, circus schools started popping up a lot more around the country. There's now, I think we say, over 300 circus schools in the country. And so people tend to be able to find something a little closer to home for their recreational classes. So our recreational students have actually gotten a little more geographically specific. It's now mostly Philadelphia metro area. Still some suburbs, but we don't have New Yorkers coming down as much. But the other thing that happened was last year when we opened our new facility, we also opened the first circus college in the United States. It's the first licensed program for higher education for the circus arts in the US. These kind of schools exist in other parts of the world, especially Europe and Australia and Canada, but in the US there were none. So we opened the first one, and now we have students, of course, coming from all over the place for that. So our current class, we have 23 students right now who come from from Texas and from Oregon and from Missouri and from Florida, all over the place.
So how does that curriculum either mimic, or is it different from a typical college curriculum then?
It's got a lot of similarities to a typical college curriculum. It has some general education classes, but we think of it more as a vocational program, because all of the gen ed stuff is really focused on making them better circus artists. So we have classes in music and in writing and in financial management, but they're all with this idea that you are becoming a professional circus artist, and what do you need to supplement that career, right? It's also quite separate from the recreational programs of the school, because even though at some level, okay, you're teaching trapeze to both groups, the full-time students can take a lot more risks. They can go a lot more directions, because they're there for almost 40 hours a week. So we have them doing a lot of dance, a lot of theater, a lot of presentation work, where they have to show work every week to us, because they're really the ones who are trying to make those new contemporary circus companies.
I'm going to show a picture here, because I'm going to show the outside of your new building. First of all, this is the outside of your new structure. It's an old church in Germantown that you have taken over, and people probably pass this on Green Street every day, and they're probably thinking that it's still a church, but on the inside, and I'm going to show this, of what the church looks like today is this. And so could you explain to our viewers what exactly they're seeing in this photo?
Sure. So what you're seeing is the sanctuary space of the former St. Madeleine Sophie Church, which was built in the 1920s. And it's a beautiful structure with concrete arches. I guess it's a very unusual architectural structure for a church that had been very well preserved. When we moved in, they of course had to take out all the pews and the altar pieces and all of those things, but there's still a working organ. There's an organ loft there. What we had to do was install steel beams for all of our aerial rigging, and now the space is full of gymnastic mats and unicycles and rolling globes and all kinds of circus equipment that we use to make our performance work.
Wow. And yeah, you could, if you look at the photo, like when I was just holding it up, you can, now that you say that it was a church, you could see that it really was a church. But how many people do pass by? And you said yourself, even before, you used to pass by this building and just assume
Right.
that it was a church.
So many. And we're directly adjacent to the Upsall train station, so people are always getting on and off that train
Yep.
and kind of peeking over to see what's going on. So in fact, we just opened a couple months ago our flying trapeze rig. It's this outdoor giant net with people flying through the air, and that's overlooking the train station.
Yeah.
So hopefully more people now can see it when they're walking by to see what's really going on.
Yeah, the tendency might be, and if you're a beginner and you want to start, or if you want to come back and take classes, I mean, everybody is welcome. But someone might, even as a result of this show, say, that's what I want to do. I want to be a trapeze artist. You really got to understand that's great, but you really got to appreciate the artistry and the physical conditioning that one must be in before you undertake this challenge.
Yeah, and I'm always interested to see how people come to that path. You know, for me, it was as a teenager thinking, I love the circus, I want to be part of the circus. But more and more people discover it later in life, and then they decide for themselves whether I want to do this professionally or I just want this to be a constant part of my hobby life. Or become a teacher. I have so many different pathways now in circus that people are pursuing. It's especially fascinating to watch the kids, because the kids who grow up learning circus from a young age, it just becomes their thing that they do. Some kids are soccer players, and some kids are math geeks, and some kids now are circus performers from childhood, and it's the thing they love. And one of my kind of passions and my hope for this school is that it lets kids understand that there is a path for them. If they really love it, they can continue it into their professional adult life.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the professional adult life, because we talked a little bit earlier about those big organizations out there, and I don't want to use any of the names, but we can come up with at least 2 or 3 or 4 of them. But if someone would go through your school and go through your programs, and they want to take that to the next level, are they being amply prepared to at least audition for some of these bigger shows, whether it is a big circus or some other type of performance venue for them? Maybe it's going to Broadway and performing on Broadway. I mean, the conditioning that they are getting at your school, might they be able to parlay that into something professionally?
Absolutely. And it's an important question that we think about all the time. What we've seen in other countries is that the rise of circus schools at some point outpaces the existence of big companies to audition for, right? And so then you have a lot of graduates who are leaving school with all these wonderful skills, and where do they go with them? And yes, some of them will definitely go into other fields. They might go into theater performing or dance performing. They might become directors or writers. But what happens a lot in these other countries is that they also start smaller companies. In France, I think there's something like 300 circus companies in France. They're just little companies that make shows. And there's enough people to make those shows, enough audiences to see them, venues that will support them, that whole infrastructure works. Here we just don't have that yet. And so what we are really hoping for with our graduates is that, okay, some of them will go on audition for the big companies, some of them might take a different path, but we're hoping a good number of them decide to make their own shows and their own companies.
So besides, one of the other things I saw on your website is that you also have, I guess, the traditional dance classes for both children and adults, if that's what you might be looking for. We
do. Dance, the same as theater and clown, dance is a great supplement to circus training. It's a lot about body awareness and strength building, but we find that the dance programs are more successful with the professional students because they know how much they need it. They know that they need for their trampoline work, they need to have really good alignment of their bodies, and ballet helps them a lot. Those things, connections make a lot more sense at the professional level. For our younger students and our recreational students, it sometimes works a little better to just bring dance into the program as opposed to having we do have some separate classes, but more students prefer to just do it as part of their regular class.
If someone is interested in coming to your school, but they're not quite sure, and this goes back to a question that I had earlier in the program, is it possible for me to come and observe a class, whether it's in circus or dance or somewhere in between? I mean, might I, because everybody might have an image in their mind of what they want to do or what they're capable of doing, but until you really see it in action, do you really know?
Yes, exactly. And so certainly people can come and observe classes, both adult classes and kid classes. People can, there's observation areas in all of our main spaces, and you can sit and watch. It's a lovely thing to do. But to get to your point also of the physical needs, what is required for these skills, it does depend on the class a little bit. Most of our classes, there's very little restriction on the type of person that can do it. Age, height, weight, very few things are really restrictive. Certainly some classes will be easier than others. Our flying trapeze program, for example, I believe the restriction is you have to be over the age of 6 and under 250 pounds, I think, to do flying trapeze, and that's it. We have 95-year-old grandmothers who do flying trapeze. We have, 7-year-old children that do flying trapeze. It's, a lot of people can try it. And depending on what your goals are, if your goals are fun, or if your goals are fitness, or creative skill development, you might find the right class for you. Because if you want to be a hand balancer, for example, what you need is a little different than what you need to be a juggler.
Yeah. As I was preparing for our show today, I thought, well, we have plenty of information to talk about the school, and then lo and behold, on the website, and I also heard on the radio, the haunted circus this year. So how did that come about, and what's that all about?
That's a new thing that we just started this year. Many of our staff members had long been interested in doing a haunted house in our building because the building is so beautiful, it's so old, has lots of interesting nooks and crannies. And we've also had a lot of just creepy, scary circus acts that have developed over the years. So they brought all that kind of power together, the idea of doing circus in a creepy way and using the building to make basically a haunted house in our building.
It's my understanding this is the only type of its kind in the country, the only haunted circus house in the country.
It's the only one I know of, for sure. Yeah, I've seen Halloween-themed circus shows in tents and things before, but a Halloween-themed circus in a building like this is quite unique.
Yeah, and the tendency is to think, because some of these circus or some of these Halloween offerings, events, can be kind of extreme, and may not necessarily be family friendly. So, is the haunted circus family friendly and or extreme?
It's designed to be family friendly.
Okay.
I think right now in our first year we're trying to do a bit of both, and the way they've done that is to make 2 different pathways for it.
Okay.
So you have a cellar path, which is designed for kids age 6 to 10 kind of thing, and then you have an attic path, which is designed for older than that, teens and up kind of thing. So different levels of scary. But for both groups, there's, in the sanctuary space, there's a performance that happens, and all these various stations. You can bob for apples, you can get your fortune told, you can make some crafts, all that kind of stuff. So it's very family friendly, and our hope is that people can bring kids of all ages to it.
Yeah. And obviously this was the result of, you said, staff wanting to do something like this. And so what are some of the other plans for the circus school down the road here?
Well, as I said, we have a lot of performances that happen in the building during the year. The next major one is our gala. So we do a black tie fancy pants gala on November 3rd this year, which is a chance to also make the building really come alive in a very elegant way. It's fully catered, and we have professional artists doing really amazing things in all the spaces for that gala event. And then throughout the rest of the year, we'll have things like, we'll have holiday parties. We're planning on doing a lighting of the building this year. We put Christmas lights all on the outside of it. And we have a series called Test Flights, which is works in progress showing once a month for circus artists who are just trying something out and want to do it in front of an audience.
Yeah. I want to mention the website as well as where people can go. There's a phone number that they can, if you want to give us that phone number.
Absolutely.
If they want more information, how they can go about getting that.
Yes, so absolutely check out the website, phillycircus.com, Philly circus.com. And the phone number is 215-849-1991.
All right, and again, you can, a lot of great information there. Can they also register for classes there, or do they have to come in person to register, or they can register online?
They can register right on the website for all of our classes.
Yeah. Now, for those people, here we are, sitting and we're talking and they're thinking, well, do I need for the next program date to roll around before I can join? Can I join at any part of the year, any point during the year?
Yeah, so it's different for adults and kids. Adults can join anytime during the year. We have a class card system where you can buy a single class or a 5-class card or an unlimited class card if you want to. And for kids, it's different. Kids are on sessions. So there's a fall session, a winter session, and a spring session. And we just, I believe next week actually, we're releasing the schedule information for our winter session for kids.
Okay.
So those classes fill up fast.
Yeah, I bet they do. And as you, I can hear the passion and see the passion about the circus arts as well as for the school. So who are some of the members of the faculty? I mean, you're not just going and taking a college intern and saying, okay, tag, you're it. You're teaching the dance class next week. So who comprises the faculty?
Sure, that's one of the challenges I've really had to face as my school has grown over the years, because we now have over 30 people that work for the school in some capacity. And it started off being my students. I would teach a student and they would get good enough to become the next teacher in the list. But soon that became not feasible, and I had to find teachers to move from other parts of the country to Philadelphia for this. So we now have a good number of our staff that have relocated here to teach at the Circus School. And yes, they have to have a very specialized skill. I can't tell you the number of people who've asked me to franchise this school over the years. Can you open one on the main line? Can you open one in Kensington? And one of the main reasons I will never do that is because the staff is so precious, and they are special, they're hard to find, and I want to keep them all in one place where we can really learn from each other and continue to grow.
When you sit down and evaluate your program, do you look at other programs, not necessarily as competition, but what might be working in Delaware or what might be working in Des Moines as a way to see if that might or can be incorporated into your program here?
I love doing that. It's one of my favorite things to do. We just got back from actually the Circus Educators Conference in Georgia this year, which was so the national conference happens once every 2 years, where all the circus schools come together and meet and do exactly that. And I run the directors roundtable for that, because our school is actually one of the biggest schools in the country still. Even though many more have grown up, I would say we're in the top 5 of just size and scope of what we do in the country. And so it's lovely to meet with those people, but then also to hear from all the smaller schools about their new practices and policies. We're always learning from each other. Circus education is not a very standardized thing yet. It's still really new. It's still really, people tend to feel like they're operating in isolation. And so to hear from other coaches in other parts of the country is invaluable.
Yeah, I would think. What is the biggest challenge for you and the school in terms of getting out into the community and sort of selling the concept or selling the idea to the community, like, hey, come on in and see who we are, what we do. So you're running a school, but you want the support of the residents, the neighbors in your area, and the public at large to sort of sit up and take notice as to what you're doing.
Yeah, that has been a challenge for us, and I'm excited to do it more now that we're in this new building, and something like the Haunted Circus is a really great opportunity for us to do that, because the ticket prices are so low. It's $5 for kids, $10 for adults, and we're handing out these postcards all the time to show people, like, come on in. We really want to make sure people know they can come into our building anytime and just see what's going on. It's a public space, it's an open space, it's not exclusive at all. And so our goal is really to communicate that over the next couple of years to make sure that the whole neighborhood, ideally the whole city of Philadelphia, but for sure Northwest, really gets that we're there and feels welcome there.
Do you have a showcase at the end of the year where not only parents and spouses and family members and the community, the people could come in and actually see the talent that's on display there?
We have lots of them, in fact. We have one for our holiday party in December. We certainly have end-of-year shows in May when our students finish their school years. Once a year, we will go downtown. We have shows at Fringe Arts for our professional students. And this upcoming weekend on the 20th, my youth troupe is performing at the Kimmel Center.
Wow.
So we do lots of things like that where we try to bring performers out. if you see Circus at a local festival, it's probably us.
Well, that's it's fascinating. Do a lot of great work there. Very passionate about your work, I could tell. And again, I want to mention the website as well as the phone number. If you want more information, you go to phillycircus.com, or you could call 215-849-1991. Anything else you would like to add before we have to wrap it up? I mean, she didn't bring the trapeze, swing for us to, demonstrate here. Maybe next time. But anything else you would like to add?
Well, I really appreciate the chance to talk to you about this. I mean, as you can see, it's like my passion, my life's work.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'd love your viewers to know is how much circus is accessible to everyday people. There is an element of exoticism about it, an element of foreignness to it that I think we don't all connect to immediately, but everyone should try it.
Yeah.
Everyone should come and take a class and see what it's like.
Well, hopefully we can get and garner some interest for you as a result of this program. Pleasure meeting you. I'm glad we had this chance to sit down and talk about your school and all the great offerings that you have, and look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, until the next time, my name is Paul Perrello. Thanks so much for being with us on this program that we call The Philly Factor.